First, you need to collect your materials. You'll need padded materials. You'll need rigid elements, 2 that run from the patient's crotch to a few inches beyond their foot, cloth strips, 10 strips that are each a minimum of 24 inches long, a small roll of cloth to place behind the patient's knee for comfort, Ziploc bag to create a cool pack to place on the injured site to manage inflammation. Anything cooler than 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius works. Ice water, water from a lake or stream, and cool mud are all items you can place in the Ziploc bag to create a cool pack. Now let us build the splint. We will build the splint next to the patient's injured leg and then lift the leg into the splint. This will minimize the number of times we need to manipulate the injured leg and reduce patient discomfort. Place the cool pack on the injury site. Remove the patient's shoe or boot. Remove any ankle or foot jewelry. If the patient is wearing socks, you'll want to use trauma shears to cut a flap at the toe of the sock so you can have access to the patient's toe to check for circulation, sensation, and movement. Lay down 8 cloth strips. 4 cloth strips above the knee and 4 strips below the knee. Lay down the 2 rigid elements on top of the cloth strips. Lay down the padded material on top of the rigid elements. Lay down the folded or rolled cloth to be behind the patient's knee in the splint. Remove the cool pack from the patient's leg. Using both your hands, lift the patient's leg and lower it into the splint in one smooth movement. Replace the cool pack on the patient's leg at the injury site. Wrap the padded material completely around the patient's leg. Leave an opening at the injury site so you may replace the cool pack. You should not be able to see the patient's skin or clothing. Starting at the patient's hip, tie each cloth strip tight, so tight that you're not able to squeeze your finger between the cloth strip and the rigid elements. Ask the patient if the tie is too tight while you are tying. Notice that I am wrapping the tie 3 times when I tie the knot. This increases friction and keeps the knot from loosening over time. I tie the knot using bunny ears so I may easily untie the strip if I need to adjust it later. Locate the patient's knee and be careful not to tie a strip over the knee. Now we must immobilize the patient's foot. Using a wide cloth strip or a cloth strip and a rolled piece of cloth, wrap around the sole of the patient's foot and tie the ends to existing ties near the rigid elements. Using another wide cloth strip or bandana, wrap and tie above the patient's foot, securing the foot to the splint. Check for circulation, sensation, and movement in the patient's foot every 15 minutes and note this each time on the SOAP note. This completes the leg splinting presentation. Run the spine clearing checklist to determine if you may set the patient up and how you will transport the patient to professional medical care.